Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, it's great. Got to spend the first 2 days this week out at Ohio State camp. You were not there. We definitely need to get you out to some of those camps. Those are a lot of fun. You meet a ton of people. First of all, Bill Green was there on Tuesday, which is automatically makes it a super fun day. Whenever you get to hang out with Bill Green in person, that's always a good time. But I think they're good if you're getting a little cynical about the sport, as you definitely are welcome to do these days with some of the other stuff that's going on with it. You end up meeting people who are like what college football is supposed to be. I walked into the camp around lunchtime, and Bill was talking to someone. So I walked over to say hi to Bill. Bill was talking to the head coach of Euclid High School, and I started talking to one of his assistant coaches, a guy named Ray, who is a fan of the podcast, enjoys the show. So hello, Ray. Couldn't remember your name. I said, that's okay. You remembered the important one. That's the important thing. So his name is Tony. He's not here. He doesn't matter. But spent half an hour, 40 minutes talking to him. And then at the end of the day met a bunch of their players. They had like 30 kids bust down from Euclid. And at the end of the day, I saw him. I said, how'd it go? Got a couple kids got offers. I mean, that's what college football is supposed to be, is guys coming out, working hard, putting in the effort, putting in the time, and, getting what could be potentially a life-changing scholarship offer. Like, that is cool. That is what college football is supposed to be about. It is, there's lots of stuff. There's lots of other stuff that college football is about sometimes, but that was it was a very cool. I really enjoyed talking to Ray for quite a while, and really enjoyed just, getting to see that side of it is always really, really fun.
Yeah, you get the perspective of talking to coaches, also being around the parents, watching their kids do this. I remember standing behind Antoine Winfield Sr., watching Antoine Winfield Jr. camping, and trying to will an offer to come this guy's way. And of course it didn't. I was right. Ohio State's defensive brain trust was incorrect, but I'm glad you had fun time. It can be a long day, but you always get something out of it. And you got to spend time with Bill Green. I can't wait to meet Bill. I've met him, Tom, don't worry.
I was going to say, I know I was there when you met Bill, or one of the times you were there with Bill. So yes, but yeah, Mark was there. Kevin was there. Like, we had the whole gang out there. So we got to get you out there. And I said on the board, we got to get you out there. And then Alex Gleitman was like, I got to fly out for one of these next year. It's like, yes, you do. We do need to get the whole gang out together for one of these. It does. It is definitely one of those, the more the merrier kind of situations. There's always a lot of stuff to watch, a lot of stuff to do. So yeah, always good to have the whole crew there.
It is interesting that you got feedback on the podcast. I was at, let's say Kroger yesterday, and I had somebody also give me feedback on the podcast, said they loved me. They could not stand you though, Tom. They just hate. And I don't know if hate is a strong enough word. They used more, but I would just to pass on the message. That's what they were saying about you. Just only you, specifically you, intrinsically you, only you, Tom. So just passing along that message. I hope that finds you in a good place.
It always does. I'm honored that people listen, as always, in this definitely real interaction that you had. I appreciate it. But we do appreciate everyone listening. We do appreciate your feedback. Your positive feedback is always welcomed. Your negative feedback is send it to @Kevin_Noon. That's where you can reach us on Twitter with your negative feedback. But yeah, no, good week. Good to have college football. Back in person. Get to shoot some college football pictures, some football pictures. Like, that's always fun. So yeah, good week out at the Woody, and we'll be back out there again next week, of course.
Then you took a stroll inside Ohio Stadium, and we got some photos of that at Buckeye Scoop right now, and you can take a look. It just looks, most fields, Tom, are green. Right now, this field is just a dirt gray, gravel gray at this point, and not like an Eastern Washington, bright red or like not on purpose type of thing. This is, it looks quite different right now.
Yeah, it's just basically a bed of crushed rock. And then when I was there on Tuesday, they were laying down, it looked like kind of like foam mats or something like that, which have kind of like a jigsaw puzzle almost kind of edge to them where they sort of fit together. And they were going to be doing, it looked like they were going to be doing that probably for the rest of the week. It was going to be quite a while to get the entire field covered in these like 6 foot by 4 foot or so mats. So yeah, that looked like a very tedious process. They were just starting that when I was there on Tuesday. But yes, there is progress being made on the field at Ohio Stadium, and I'm sure I'll pop back in there next week and just kind of get another update when I'm back on campus.
So, Tom, the show today and the second show this week, we are looking, unless something breaks, we are looking at the breakout players on offense and defense for the Buckeyes. And we should probably define what breakout means. I know the Supreme Court defines it as knowing it when you see it. So there is that. I think for our purposes, I personally am defining a breakout going from either not quite unknown, but a non-starter to a significant starter, or even a starter to, say, like an All-American type of thing, where you look at some of these guys who were honorable mention, say, like Luke Wypler, honorable mention to Remington finalist, something like that. So you can be a well-known player and a starter, and then also still be a breakout player. So I think those are the definitions we're using. Where just somebody makes a significant jump, and it doesn't matter whether they start on third base to make that jump or they start back at home plate. You know, if there is a jump, then that qualifies as a breakout. Are you okay with that?
I am okay with that, Potter Stewart. Yes, we can move forward with that. I'm going to take it that Luke Wypler is number 1 on your list.
No, but he comes before all of the tight ends on my list, because this, of course, is Ohio State. Would you like to go first and choose Marvin Harrison, or should I go first and choose Marvin Harrison?
I'll let you go first and choose Marvin Harrison. That's fine. You can take him. I mean, he scored 3 touchdowns in the last game he played, so I'm not sure how much further he can break out beyond that. But I'm excited to find out. Go ahead. How much beyond that is he going to break out?
Well, and now I'm just thinking, like, you may have to go first because you've only produced 4 breakout players.
That's fine. You go ahead. Marvin Harrison was not one of my 4. I mean, he's a very good answer. He's not the wide receiver I had on my list.
Wow. Okay, Tom does not think Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to do anything this year. That is pretty remarkable.
Well, he scored 3 touchdowns in his last game. So if they play 15 games this year and he scores 45 touchdowns, that would just sort of be status quo for him. So I'm not sure how many more touchdowns beyond 45 you think he's going to score, but go ahead and let everyone know.
Football is not measured in touchdowns, Tom. Okay?
Man, that is some Kirk Ferentz thinking right there. Woo!
I'm tired of people wanting points and yards. Well, when I look at Marvin Harrison, yes, the 3 touchdowns in the Rose Bowl, but he had 11 catches last year, and 6 of those came in that Rose Bowl, which was that the 2022 calendar year. So his process for breaking out is ongoing this year. Maybe I can sneak that game into the 2022 year, but then I would also lose the playoff championship game, of course, the 15th game, which I will need. But no, when you look at what X's have done over the last few years, other than, say, 2020, when it was Jamison Williams getting 9 catches, there is considerable room and expectations for a breakout for Marvin Harrison. And even if we're talking, say, 6 catches a game, 5 catches a game over, say, 14, 15 games, like, you're looking at anywhere from 70 to 100 catches, 900 to 1,400 yards, because the X's, like last year, it was Garrett Wilson, 70 catches, 1,058 yards, and 12 touchdowns in 11 games, 15 yards a catch. 2020, it was Jamison Williams, 17 yards a catch. 2019, with Garrett Wilson and Benjamin Victor sharing it, it was 64 catches for 977 yards in 14 games. That's 15 yards a catch. I'm putting Marvin Harrison, I'll say 14 yards a catch, and somewhere between like 70 and 90 catches, and somewhere I think he goes over 1,000 yards. I think he plays the second most snaps among the receivers and has exactly what you would expect the number 2 receiver to have at Ohio State, which is, right around 1,000 yards. And I go back to last year, Tom, when we were trying to peg, like, how many catches will Jackson Smith-Njigba have? It's like, well, there's only so many opportunities. And I think I had him around 45 or so, ended up doubling that. I don't think Marvin Harrison can double my expectations this year, because I do think, I'll say, I don't have an exact prediction right now, but somewhere over 70 catches and somewhere around 1,000 to 1,300 yards, something like that, I think is not outrageous.
Yeah, that's pretty. I think that's pretty realistic. I mean, those are big numbers, and you got to assume that Jackson Smith-Njigba is going to be putting up even more numbers. But man, I have no notes here. I think Marvin Harrison is a very good answer to this question, because you're right. I mean, you remember the Rose Bowl, but it was like, yeah, but before the Rose Bowl, there wasn't a whole heck of a lot there in terms of production, which, I mean, not because he's a bust, but because, well, you had Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson and Jackson Smith-Njigba in front of you, and there's only so many footballs to go around. You do run into that issue eventually. I'll start with a wide receiver as well. I'm going with Emeka Egbuka, and he was 9 catches, 191 yards, 21.2 yards per catch last year, but did not score a touchdown, which is one of those things that I looked at and I'm like, that can't be right, but he did not score a touchdown last year. I'm going to predict him to break out and score at least 1 touchdown this year. Ooh, yes.
Save that for the bold predictions.
Yeah, he's someone who we'll have to see how they're going to divide up the wide receiver positions, because Marvin Harrison obviously is going to just fit right into that X position. I almost said slot right into the X position, which would have been really confusing. Fit right into that X position. There's an open spot there. Easy peasy. Emeka Egbuka, you sort of project him as an H, playing in the slot there. Well, that position is probably spoken for with Jackson Smith-Njigba, so they may move him around a little bit. Obviously, they recognize what Emeka Egbuka can do as a playmaker, because you have seen it in the kicking game. You have seen it, here and there in the passing game, averaging 21 yards per catch. Like, that's a something. I don't think he's going to be at that level again, because he had that 185-yarder against Akron that kind of skews it when the denominator is that small. But still, I think he's someone who I'm going to predict him to run back a kickoff for a touchdown this year. Like, it felt inevitable last year. He averaged 29 yards per kick return on 20 returns. Like, 29 yards per return is a lot. That's a long kick return on average at this point, especially. Long of 67. There were a couple last year where just down on the field, I'm watching him break free, and I was like, oh man, he is gone, and just never quite got that last little bit there. But yeah, he seems like someone who is, I don't know how many, I don't think he's necessarily going to get as many snaps as Marvin Harrison, but I think between moving Jackson Smith-Njigba around a little bit and potentially having more 4 wideout sets, you may see more 4 wideout sets at times during the year. I know Ryan Day has talked about really they need a tight end on the field to run the ball and all that kind of stuff. But you just get the sense that you can't keep these guys off the field. And I don't know that they have a tight end that is such a threat that they're going to feel like they have to have a tight end on the field all the time. So maybe it's a little more 10 personnel this year, but one way or the other, Emeka Egbuka feels like, he was at, 191 yards last year receiving. I mean, at least like 2.5 times that, at least, in that 500-yard range, and potentially a lot more, potentially 700 yards, something like that. But, a significant step forward for him one way or the other.
Tom, on a shocked scale of 1 to 10, 1 being not shocked, 10 being extremely shocked, where would you be if he posted 1,000 yards receiving?
Probably a 3, maybe. I mean, you run into an only so many footballs problem again there, where, we're talking about all these wide receivers. That's like, oh yeah, they also have Trevion Henderson. They're going to want to get him the ball sometimes, a few times too. But, he seems like someone who you could have enough of those 60-yard plays. You just put a couple of those 60-yard plays in there. It's all of a sudden, 3 60-yarders, and all of a sudden that's 180 yards, and like you're on your way. So I'm not expecting it, but also I would not be shocked at all if he got up in that range.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking 50 catches, 20 yards a catch, obviously that's rare, but like there's some capability there. He did, as you said, 29 yards per kickoff return, led the Big Ten. He was second team All Big Ten as a kickoff returner. He was my number 2 pick here. I think they'll move everybody around. As Marvin Harrison said this spring, one of his touchdowns in the Rose Bowl came out of the slot, Marvin Harrison. So like they're just going to move guys around to get everybody as many snaps as possible. And then it's just a matter of was the play, where were you in the progression for that play? And if you're towards the top quite a bit, these guys are all going to make plays and be the beneficiaries of that. And I'm with you. Like once he is the guy, then 1,000 yards, no problem. I don't know how many snaps will be available, and then how many times are they going to go to him? That's the other question. You look at, Jamison Williams in 2020 was a starter, had 9 catches. Now they're in a different world now with the passing game than they were with Justin Fields, that bum. But they've got somebody that can actually throw the ball now, and they've got some guys that can block for him. So I don't know, I don't know what to peg to put the expectations on, because it's just such a wide range, and it just comes down to snaps basically for me. And it could be, it is the most likely 45 catches and 600 yards or something like that. Maybe. And there's another receiver that we haven't talked about that we probably will here eventually that's going to be involved as well. So just a lot of unknowns there in terms of who's all playing and how are they playing and how well are they able to get those guys in and out.
Well, you look at last year's numbers. Jackson Smith-Njigba had 1,600 yards receiving. Garrett Wilson, about 1,050. Chris Olave, 936. And then the fourth receiver in terms of yardage on the team last year was Travion Henderson at 312. The fifth was Jeremy Ruckert at 309. Rather notably, neither of those coaches played wide receiver. Emeka Egbuka was the 4th leading wide receiver on last year's team with just 191 yards. So you figure if I keep starting to say, you figure teams are going to try and take Jackson Smith-Njigba away, and I'm sure they will try, but I don't know, I don't know that I'm betting against Jackson Smith-Njigba putting up another 1,400, 1,500 type yard season. And then you divide, the next 3 wide receivers last year basically combined were like 2,100. So you divide that by the next 3 wide receivers on the depth chart this year, Harrison and Fleming and Egbuka, and it's like that averages out to 700. One of them's going to have 1,000. One of them's going to have 500. Like however that ends up getting divided up. But you're probably not. Last year's offense was explosive. Last year's offense had, even with Garrett Wilson only playing 11 games, he hit 1,000 yards. Chris Olave only playing 12 games, he was at 936. You could have had 3,000-yard receivers last year. You could have 3,000-yard receivers again this year.
Right. Who's your next guy?
I'm going to take an offensive lineman. Not many people may have heard of him. His name is Paris Johnson. Came in very not very highly touted recruit. Didn't have any pictures of him standing next to Orlando Pace to invite unwelcome comparisons, so it's totally cool. He came in, played a little bit as a true freshman in the weird 2020 season, played at guard, and some in the college football playoffs, came in, filled in some while people were out hurt, played some in the playoff there at guard, and then last year started at guard. Now he gets a chance to kick out to left tackle. I feel like we still have to kind of pump the brakes here because you haven't seen him play tackle yet, really, in any kind of meaningful. You haven't seen him play tackle in any kind of a live fire situation yet. The spring game is like, okay, that's fine, but it's not really. It feels like the pieces are there for this to be a breakout season where he goes from the guy who was a good guard for Ohio State last year to guy who is a left tackle who's potentially a first-round pick. first team All Big Ten, is he in that All America conversation? Like, it feels like the pieces are all there. Do they all come together? Maybe we'll see. You don't want to get too far out over your skis on any of this kind of stuff, but it feels like all the pieces are there for him to really take that next step this year and really, fulfill some of the hype that he came in with, and he wasn't asking for the hype. This is something that kind of gets unfairly cast on high school kids sometimes, but he has looked, he has progressed. He's been a contributor. He's been a significant contributor for the last couple of years. Now it feels like this is the year that it really it all comes together for him.
Yeah, I like that one. And the thing is, he was a second team All Big Ten pick at guard last year by the Big Ten coaches, third team by the media. Media knows better, as we know, but not an unknown, but certainly also a good candidate for a breakout because he is moving positions. That's one of the, I didn't mention that qualifier, but it follows. And then obviously, the expectations that he has are immense, but also he is looking at this as his contract year, and you would expect the absolute best. The first time he's actually getting to play the position that he came to Ohio State for, so he was on my list as well. In line with that, Tom, I'm going to give you my next guy. It absolutely is, and he's following, very well could be following the Paris Johnson move here, basically, where, yes, Paris Johnson played a little bit as a freshman, just as Donovan Jackson did. And now you're going to have Donovan Jackson at left guard for the Buckeyes, and I would not be shocked at all if he is a second team All Big Ten player or something like that. I think he's going to be very, very good, very, very solid, and one of those guys that he's in there and you notice him in a good way. And the guards in there, sometimes you can notice them in a good way. The offensive tackles, sometimes you notice them in a bad way. Like there are times you don't even want to know what the tackles. If you don't hear from a tackle, that's perfect. I think if you don't hear from a guard, that's not great. Like they need to make themselves known in the running game, and I think he's somebody that will do that. And he was my number 3 guy on this list, and so I'm excited to see what he can do. And you have not heard anything bad about him, any kind of concerns from anywhere, any sources, any coaches, anybody about him. So I'm expecting big things.
He was next on my list too, for all the reasons you just said. So I have no notes. Perfect. 100% on that one. Yeah. He seems like someone who is, when you hear so consistently from coaches that, it was like he came into the spring already basically written into the starting lineup. It felt like that tells me the coaches know what they have there. They like what they have there. I mean, what is a reasonable ceiling for him this year? I mean, you're not going to necessarily be an All-American as a true sophomore, but like, what's a reasonable ceiling for him this year?
Yeah, I think All Big Ten is second, like Paris Johnson, second team All Big Ten is perfectly acceptable, and you don't need to expect more than that. I'm not going to be shocked if he's an All-American because he does come from a well-known program and he's a well-known recruit. And a lot of times that's half the battle. You're at a place where people see you. So especially on the offensive line and defensive line, like the interior, you need to have your name known first, kind of thing. And then people are like, oh, well, I only know 8 names, interior offensive linemen. So I'm going to go with the 5 that are from the biggest schools that I've heard of before, is a lot of how the voting goes down.
Yeah, that's I think one of those underrated parts of the voting process. It's like, why do all these guys? Why is it always people I've heard of? Why am I never surprised with the offensive? With the All-American team, it's like, well, the coaches are busy and they don't watch anyone other than their team and the team that they play, and the media is busy covering the team that they cover and not watching every other. We don't get to watch all 130 teams every Saturday. Like, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but when we're at the stadium for like 12 hours, so. We're watching the game that we're watching and 1 or 2 other games. So I'm not getting a chance to do a lot of in-depth breakdown of other games, at least on Saturday. So yeah, it is not quite a popularity contest, but it's a name recognition contest a little bit, maybe. So yeah, being an Ohio State player, you're going to be on national TV. You are going to be the game that people are watching if they watch another game other than their own on a Saturday. So yeah, that's he does seem like he's in position to be the all Big Ten type player this year, and then when we're doing this show next year, he may be the guy who we're talking about for the next step up the ladder after that. I have another offensive lineman here. I went very offensive line heavy here, but Dawand Jones. Dawand Jones is he's already kind of exceeded expectations for what he was going to be at the college level. He was sort of flirting with the NFL maybe a little bit, like considering the NFL after last season. Ended up coming back. What was he? Was he a second team All Big Ten last year?
Second team by the media and third team by the coaches.
Okay, once again, media had the correct read there. He seems like someone who's another guy who will have the name recognition thing going for him. He stands out on the field because he's just so big. He's a little bit of a character, so he's kind of sort of a popular player in college football, and also this should be a real good offensive line. And if you're a real good offensive line, you're in that like Joe Moore Award kind of conversation. A lot of those linemen are going to be in that first team All Big Ten, potential All-American kind of conversation. It feels like both of those tackles to me, in addition to Donovan Jackson, like you could have a bunch of those guys in that type of conversation where good last year, potentially even, a step or so, a step and a half beyond that this year.
Dawand Jones is the only offensive lineman I didn't have on my list, but you spell out some good ideas about why he can, because he's different, and different stands out, and he definitely stands out. And I just, as a right tackle, he's going to need that other stuff to gain that notice, I think, and certainly a possibility there. What can he be an All-American? At this point, if you're a second team All Big Ten player, your first year starting, then yeah, it wouldn't be outrageous to be an All-American. I think that's probably what he would need to be to break out, so that's why I didn't go with it. Instead, my number 4 pick, Tom, I went with Matthew Jones. Matt Jones was a honorable mention All Big Ten pick last year as a utility guy, and now he's going to be a starter at right guard for the Buckeyes. I saw I think it was PFF, tweet out this week that he's had the highest interior grade of any Ohio State offensive lineman over however many years. And, the PFF grades are what they are. They're not 100% accurate by any means, but it's information. So the information has been looking good for Matthew Jones, and he still has one more year of eligibility after this, but I think he would like to. He's been here for a long time, and so I think he would like to begin the next portion of his career. And he's played well whenever he's gotten in there. He has a determination. He's a tone setter as well. He's just also a quiet guy, so that's going to maybe limit him a little bit in terms of notoriety. But he's a guy that I would expect to be second team All Big Ten, maybe first. And again, there's some name recognition that is necessary. But I think, as you said, this entire Ohio State offensive line, I think, is going to have some notoriety around it, and I think that will benefit Matthew Jones as people then get to see him play.
Yeah, this is a rising tide lifts all boats kind of thing, where if you're, if you were considered the best offensive line in the country, and Ohio State is sort of near the top of a lot of those, preseason best units kind of conversations, they're at least the top of the Big Ten, if not the top in the country. If you're, perceived as being one of the 5 guys who is part of the best line in the country, that's gonna draw a lot more eyeballs and a lot more attention to you. And it is probably not surprising. Okay, let's just round it off with our last guy. I'm going to go with Luke Wypler. I don't want to spoil anything, but I think we're both feeling pretty optimistic about what the Ohio State offensive line might look like this year. Luke Wypler was someone who probably got thrown into the fire a little before you would have expected. He was not, I think, last year, coming into the spring, I think everyone probably figured, okay, Harry Miller is going to be the center. And then Harry Miller, obviously for off-field reasons that we've talked about a whole bunch on previous shows, didn't play last year. So, for Luke Wypler to come in the way he did and just immediately be perfectly fine as a Big Ten center, I think that tells me, okay, that, with another year, normally you look at offensive linemen and it's like, the third year is kind of where you sort of expect, you figure there's a redshirt year where they don't do anything, and then there's a year where they're maybe backing up, and then they move in as a starter the third year. That's kind of the traditional pattern. There are guys, obviously, who are ahead of that pattern. Donovan Jackson, Paris Johnson. You hear the way we're talking about them and what they could be after 3 years. Well, here's Luke Wypler. Let's see what Luke Wypler is this year, because, you mentioned the Remington Award. It feels like Remington finalist at least is a real possibility for him this year. Again, you're gonna get some notoriety. You're gonna be a significantly better player your second year than your first year. This is going to be an offense that puts up just ridiculous numbers of points throughout the year, which is only, there are only so many stats you can put on an offensive lineman. So a lot of the times it'll be like, and he's the center for an offense that's putting up 923 points a game. Like that'll be on the graphic that they put up there. And, that will only help bolster his case as well. So yeah, between the second year starter bump and some of the possibilities in terms of national awards, I think he's on that list as well. Tony, we're out of offensive linemen. I guess you got to pick someone else for your last one.
No, not necessarily. But it is interesting. Like, he was third team All Big Ten last year by the media. Again, media knows what they're doing. The good news for him is Tyler Linderbaum is gone, so there'll be opportunity. Like, Iowa center is gone. Like, remember when Nick Mangold played and he was playing at the same time as the Minnesota center who kept getting All Big Ten or whatever. He's got. I think he's going to have a really, really good year. Now, Tom, I think we kind of went out of order. I think I let you go twice here because we've only gone through 6 guys. But the next guy on my list, because we started at Marvin Harrison, then Emeka, and Donovan Jackson, Matthew Jones, Paris Johnson, Luke Wypler. Dawand Jones. Okay, I didn't have him on my list. That's why I didn't have him checked off here. So, okay, good. So then, is this my last guy? Is that what you said? I'm going to go Julian Fleming, and the reasons why this is. I bristle a bit when people already want to like write him off, and now it's time to move on. It's Emeka, and I'm eventually starting to gonna write a little bit about Julian Fleming and how maybe don't write him off just yet. When you look at past receivers in Ohio State history, now okay, he's 2 years in now. He has 19 career catches. Those 19 catches are 8 more than Terry McLaurin had after 3 years. They are like 12 more than Johnny Dixon had after 3 years. They're 6 more than Paris Campbell had after 3 years. They are 16 more than Michael Thomas had after 2 years. They are 4 more than Terry Glenn had after 2 years. And they are 4 more than D. Miller had after 2 years. And these are all guys who had significant careers at Ohio State who have not had the first 2 years that Julian Fleming did. So what does that mean for this year? I don't know. 45 catches, 600 yards, something like that. I think there will be a couple of games that make him stand out, that break him out, kind of maybe like a Noah Brown 4-touchdown game, something like that, where people take notice and it's like, oh, they've got Jackson Smith and Jigba. They've got Marvin Harrison. They've got Emeka Egbuka. Oh, and they also have Julian Fleming. I think this is the year where people are like, oh, and they also have this guy.
Yeah, he's someone who you have heard such incredible stuff from people around the program about him for so long that it's like, at some point this is going to happen. Like it has to happen. And he's someone who has been kind of snake bit over the course of his career, where he's had a series of injuries, and some of them have been serious injuries, and some of them have just been like, a little minor hamstring tweak, and we're just going to hold him out for this week because the turf is wet at Indiana, so we're just going to hold him out so he doesn't tweak the hamstring any worse. So he's just constantly been like, maybe this is the nope, not yet. And the spring game this year was the same thing. He was at the top of my list of people I was most interested to see, and it's like, well, he has just like a minor thing, and there's no sense in risking it. So the players and the coaches are seeing it during practice. You haven't seen it really a whole heck of a lot, and we haven't seen it too much more than you have. But, the little bits that you've seen out of him have just been so remarkable, where, even, the play at Nebraska last year, where it was like this incredible catch, and it was ruled out of bounds because his toe was 3 blades of fake grass over from the green onto the white, or whatever it was. I think it got overturned even on replay. But he's someone who it feels like you're just kind of like waiting, and it's like the gif of the guy going, wait for it, like listening, like you can like feel it coming. It's going to happen at some point, and it needs to come together. He had 12 catches, 86 yards last year. He had the 1 touchdown in the Rose Bowl. But yeah, I mean, even in the Rose Bowl, he scores his first career touchdown. It's in the Rose Bowl. And then Marvin Harrison and Jackson Smith and Jigba both score 3 touchdowns, and so no one's talking about Julian Fleming's touchdown in the Rose Bowl. It just feels like he's kind of constantly getting overshadowed, and at some point that's going to stop. And the question to me is not, is he going to be any good this year? I think the question to me is, if you're looking at the numbers I laid out earlier, where it's like someone's going to have 1,000 yards and someone's going to have 700 yards and someone's going to have 500 yards. Is he the 500? Is he the 700? Is he 1,000? He's going to be, the 86 yards he had last year, he's going to be, minimally 5 times that this year, minimally, and probably more than that. So, yeah, I think he's a very good pick for this list as well. I think basically looking at this exercise, I was like, it pretty much feels like we're just going to pick all the wide receivers and offensive linemen, right? And yep, that's what we did. So, never bet against a Brian Hartline wide receiver is. Especially a Brian Hartline wide receiver with the physical tools that someone like Julian Fleming has.
Yeah. I did have Evan Pryor later on in my list, but it would, what exactly constitutes a breakout for the third running back? That's a debate that will rage on, Tom. For now, though, our debate, I believe, is over. You have anything else before we go?
Was that the debate? It felt like we agreed on pretty much everything. I'm not sure there was much of a debate here.
Well, that's how debates go now if you've watched any news television.
This is a regular Lincoln Douglas podcast, like boom, back and forth, just haymaker. I think twice I said I had no notes. Like, why do these guys hate each other so much? I if you haven't figured that out yet, friends, I don't know what to tell you.
Anyway, Tom, thank you for your contributions and all of your notes. Anyway, that will do it for this episode. We'll talk defensive breakout players in the next episode, unless something crazy happens and we have to push that show. But look for that one as you look for all of our podcasts loyally and appreciatively. So thank you all for tuning in. As I said it right, Tom. It's a good word. As you're listening to any podcast here, make sure to check out the rest of the podcasts here on the network. Tom with the Morning Scoop, Bill Green and Mark Givler with Gives in the Bank, Kevin Noon with his Big Me Kickoff, Alex Gleitman around the Oval. Check all of those out. And thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll talk to you all later.